Hey there again, Anatomy. We are going to take a look at the reading guide for the circulatory system, which of course deals with the heart, circulation, all kinds of fun stuff. As normal, I'm going to go pretty quickly, so if you need to pause the video to write down some notes, feel free. Other than that, we're going to move on through it. And yeah, the most important function of the cardiovascular system is transportation. Okay, we need to move things throughout our body, dissolved gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, all kinds of stuff needs to be moved through our body. Okay, all the ones I just mentioned, plus cell waste, hormones, all of that stuff needs to go through our body. Okay, now the heart itself is roughly the size of your fist. Okay, so hold up your fist, put it kind of in the middle of your chest, slightly over to the left hand side, and that's about the size of your heart. Okay, it weighs less than a pound. This one has an apex too, just like the lungs, where the apex of the lungs were way up here and they pointed up. The apex of the heart actually points down, okay, down and to the left. Says the bulk of the mass is between the second and sixth rib, and about 2/3 is to the left hand side of the median. Okay, so a lot of times people think of their heart as being on the left hand side of their body. It's like, oh yeah, it's like way over here. No, that's not actually the case. It's 2/3 to the left hand side of the median. Okay, so for the most part, it's right there in the center, but it's not completely centered. Um, your heart's going to beat about 100,000 times a day, 35 million times a year, 2.5 billion times over the course of your lifespan. You've got roughly 6 quarts of blood, which is going to be pumped through your blood, pumped through your body, and it's going to be pumped all the way through about 1,000 times in a day. Okay, you've got a double sac around your heart called the pericardium. Once again, we've got another serous membrane here. We keep talking about serous membranes, this, serous membranes, got that. Okay, they're very important. Okay, you've got the visceral pericardium, which sits right up next to the heart. Okay, it's attached to the physical heart itself. Okay, then you've got serous fluid, and then once again, you've got the parietal pericardium, which is on the outside of that, and that serous fluid in between, you've got the sac that's going to eliminate friction between that and the lungs and other vital organs. Okay. So the heart itself has three layers. You've got the epicardium, which is the outermost layer. This is also known as the visceral pericardium. Okay, so the epicardium and the visceral pericardium is the same thing. Okay, it's made up of connective tissue. Then you've got the bulk of the heart, which is the myocardium. That is going to be mostly cardiac muscle. Okay, that's the muscle of the heart itself. Okay, this is the layer that actually does the contracting. Okay, it's a very, very important layer. Then you've got the endocardium, which is a very thin sheet of simple squamous membrane, which is on the inside of the heart. Okay, and that's what your blood actually touches. Okay, your blood doesn't actually touch the myocardium; it touches the endocardium. Okay, as far as the heart itself goes, you've got 4 chambers. This is extremely important in understanding this unit. Okay, the atria are on top. Atria being plural for atrium. Okay, you've also got what's called an auricle, which is a little pouch that's next to each atrium as well. Okay, you've also got ventricles, which are on the bottom. Okay, the ventricles are larger than the atrium. Okay, and then this is going to be what's called the discharge chamber. Okay, this is going to be what's going to pump blood out of the heart. Okay, so blood's going to enter the heart into the atria, okay, right or left, and we're going to talk about the pathway here in a bit. But the blood's going to enter the atria, then it's going to drop down into the ventricle. Then when the heart pumps, okay, when the heart beats, it's going to force blood out of the ventricles and then out through these arteries, which are going to go away from the heart. Okay, these are all lined with endocardium to help blood flow smoothly. Okay, some supporting structures. We have the vena cavas, superior and inferior vena cava. These are going to carry oxygen poor blood, or what I like to call used blood, from the body back to the heart. Okay, so all of your veins are going to eventually dump into the vena cavas. Okay, so here's your inferior vena cava here. Here's your superior vena cava here, and they're both going to dump blood into the right atrium. Okay, and then from the right atrium, it'll go to the right ventricle, so on and so forth. Okay, we've also got the pulmonary trunk, which is going to carry oxygen poor blood from the heart to the pulmonary arteries. Okay, now pulmonary, anytime you see the word pulmonary, it's referring to the lungs. Okay, so a pulmonary artery, arteries go away from the heart, pulmonaries is referring to the lungs. So the pulmonary arteries and the pulmonary trunk, okay, the pulmonary trunk is this first part, and then you've got the pulmonary arteries, which are going to carry blood away from the heart towards the lungs. Okay, that's what the pulmonary arteries do. Interesting note about your pulmonary arteries, these are your only arteries which carry oxygen poor blood or used blood. Okay, and they're carrying that used blood away from the heart to the lungs so that they can get recharged with oxygen. Okay, we've got pulmonary veins as well. Pulmonary veins are going to dump fresh blood, or what I like, or oxygen-rich blood, which I like to call fresh blood, back into the heart. Okay, so those pulmonary veins are going to dump that fresh blood into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it dumps into the left ventricle, then out the aorta and to the rest of the body. Okay, so the aorta is the first place that's going to get that oxygen-rich blood after it leaves the heart and is going to the rest of the body. Okay, and that's going to be your largest artery in your body. Okay, let's talk about pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation goes from your heart to your lungs back to your heart. Okay, that's all the pulmonary circulation does. Okay, so when it goes from the heart, so you've got all that used blood, which has gone from your body tissues and all that stuff, from your body tissue carrying carbon dioxide rich, oxygen poor blood, and ends up going into the vena cavas, into the right atrium, into the right ventricle, out the pulmonary trunk, to the pulmonary arteries, and then back to the lungs so that it can get recharged. Okay, and the way it gets recharged is it drops off carbon dioxide, it picks up oxygen. Okay, then it's going to return back to the left side of the heart, okay, where it's going to go from the lungs to through the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, and then out through the aorta. Okay, once it goes from the aorta, or from the left ventricle, I guess, to the aorta, out to the rest of the body, that's known as systemic circulation or body circulation. Okay, it's going to the body system, so it's going to take oxygen-rich blood from the heart over to the rest of the body. It's going to give oxygen to your body tissues. It's going to pick up carbon dioxide. It's going to bring that carbon dioxide back to the heart, and then it'll end up going back through the pulmonary circulation again. Okay, so here's a little graphic representation of what we got. Here's the pulmonary circulation here, okay, going from the right ventricle, out the pulmonary trunk, through the pulmonary arteries, into the lungs, and then back to the heart. Okay, that's your pulmonary circulation. Once it goes into the left atrium, into the left ventricle, out the aorta, to the brain, to the body, things like that, that is systemic circulation. Okay, let's take a look at our valves now. The heart is equipped with 4 valves, okay, and you're going to find the valves between the atria and the ventricles. You're also going to find the valves going from the ventricles to those main arteries and stuff. So it's going to allow blood to only flow in one direction. Okay, and they've got these little cusps on them, which are known as flaps, that are going to open and close. Okay, and so when those valves open, they're going to allow blood to flow through, and then when they close, they're going to make it to where the blood can't backflow. So there's also these little things that you can see here, which are attached to the valves. Okay, these are called chordae tendineae. You're also going to hear them called heartstrings occasionally. These are going to keep the cusps in place. Okay, so when your cusps open up, they're going to, so that they don't get stuck in the blood flow and go on. The chordae tendineae are going to be what's going to keep those cusps in place. Okay, and once again, the whole point of the cusp situation is to prevent backflow. So you can see the chordae tendineae in the heart here. When we do our pig heart dissection, you're going to get an opportunity to see those chordae tendineae really, really well, and you'll also get a chance to see the cusps really well as well. So we're going to break down these valves so you get a chance to see each one. The first one is called, or the first type of valve is called the atrioventricular valve. Okay, if you break this word down, you can tell that we've got atrio, meaning atria, and ventricular, meaning ventricles. So your AV valves, or your atrioventricular valves, are going to be found between the atrium and the ventricle. Okay, the left AV valve is known as your bicuspid valve. Okay, this is going to be what's between your left atrium and your left ventricle. Okay, the reason it's called you can call it bicuspid or mitral, and the reason for that is because back in the day when they were naming these things, they felt like the mitral valve looked like a bishop's mitre, and so that's why it got called the mitral valve. Okay. Next, we have the right AV valve, and that is going to be between the right atrium and the right ventricle. It's also known as the tricuspid valve because it has three flaps. Now, a way that you can remember that, or the way I remember that, is tri. Okay, right is where you find the tricuspid valve, tri. These are going to be open during heart relaxation, and then they're going to close when the ventricles are contracting. Okay, so when those ventricles have that big push to push blood out to the rest of the body, it's going to cause those flaps between the atrium and the ventricle to close. Okay, when the heart relaxes, okay, so when these walls of the ventricle pull back, okay, for a relaxation, when it pulls back, it's going to cause a pressure change there in the heart, and it's going to cause that valve to suck open, okay? And then that's what actually pulls blood into the ventricle, okay? Now think about this: when this ventricular wall, when it contracts, it's gonna push blood out of the heart, okay? And so then it's going to push it out towards the rest of the body. Let's take a quick look at semilunar valves, and then we're going to take a quick break in the video, and we'll probably have a second video here. The next type of valve is the semilunar valves. These are going to go between the ventricles and the main arteries, which are going to leave the heart. Okay, you've got the aortic semilunar valve, which is going to go from the left ventricle to the aorta. Okay, so that's going to be between those two. So it's going to go from the left ventricle to the aorta. It's going to open when the left ventricle, when it contracts. Okay, so when it contracts, it's going to force that open. Blood's going to go out. When the heart relaxes back down, those valves are going to shut back down to prevent backflow. On the right-hand side, we have the pulmonary semilunar valve. And remember, anytime you see this word pulmonary, it refers to the lungs. Okay, so this is going to go from the right ventricle out the pulmonary trunk, and then you got the pulmonary arteries, which are going to take blood to the lungs. Okay, that's where the pulmonary semilunar valve is going to be, right there in between the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. Okay, that's going to wrap up this video. We're going to pick up the rest of the reading guide in another very short follow-up to this video so that you can get the rest of the reading guide filled in, and so that you can take a look at the pathway, the blood flow pathway, and the parts of the heart and all that good fun stuff as well. Thanks.